Hello.
Perfect, guys. I think let's do a quick test. Mute your mic more.
Testing 1 2 2 2. Test 1 2 2 2.
Morning, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but it's a bit soft in the venue.
Oh, okay, all right. Debs, just kill the music. Let's try and increase it. Hi, Kanye. How is it now? Hi, Kanye.
Okay, yes. Yes, it's fine now.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you.
Sharp, sharp.
All right. Let's go back to music. Yeah, good. More than just a promise that with the right support, dreams turn into reality. Hope turns into achievement, potential turns into legacy. Kagiso is here to walk with you every step of the way, because the future isn't just ahead of us, it is inside of us all. Kagiso Trust, ignite. The future, it doesn't just arrive, it's born inside each of us, waiting to be ignited. At Kagiso Trust, we believe the future lives in you. We've walked beside the dreamers, the doers, the job seekers, and the leaders, igniting the spark of potential that lies deep inside. When we unlock that potential, we don't just build careers or businesses, we build a future shaped by your hands, your dreams, your courage. It's all inside of you. This is more than just a chance. It's a movement, a promise that with the right support, dreams turn into reality, hope turns into achievement, and potential turns into legacy. Kagiso Trust is here to walk with you every step of the way, because the future isn't just ahead of us, it is inside of us all. Kagiso Trust, igniting human capacity. The future, it doesn't just arrive, it's born inside each of us, waiting to be ignited. At Kagiso Trust, we believe the future lives in you. We've walked beside the dreamers, the doers, the job seekers, and the leaders, igniting the spark of potential that lies deep inside. When we unlock that potential, we don't just build careers or businesses, we build a future shaped by your hands, your dreams, your courage. It's all inside of you. This is more than just a chance. It's a movement, a promise that with the right support, dreams turn into reality, hope turns into achievement, and potential turns into legacy. Kagiso Trust is here to walk with you every step of the way, because the future isn't just ahead of us, it is inside of us all. Kagiso Trust, igniting human capacity. The future, it doesn't just arrive, it's born inside each of us, waiting to be ignited. At Kagiso Trust, we believe the future lives in you. We've walked beside the dreamers, the doers, the job seekers, and the leaders, igniting the spark of potential that lies deep inside. When we unlock that potential, we don't just build careers or businesses, we build a future shaped by your hands, your dreams, your courage. It's all inside of you. This is more than just a chance. It's a movement, a promise that with the right support, dreams turn into reality, hope turns into achievement, and potential turns into legacy. Kagiso Trust is here to walk with you every step of the way because the future isn't just ahead of us, it is inside of us all. Kagiso Trust, igniting human capacity. The future, it doesn't just arrive, it's born inside each of us, waiting to be ignited. At Kagiso Trust, we believe the future lives in you. We've walked beside the dreamers, the doers, the job seekers, and the leaders, igniting the spark of potential that lies deep inside. When we unlock that potential, we don't just build careers or businesses, we build a future shaped by your hands, your dreams, your courage. It's all inside of you. This is more than just a chance. It's a movement, a promise that with the right support, dreams turn into reality, hope turns into achievement, and potential turns into legacy. Kagiso Trust is here to walk with you every step of the way because the future isn't just ahead of us, it is inside of us all. Kagiso Trust, igniting human capacity. The future, it doesn't just arrive, it's born inside each of us, waiting to be ignited. At Kagiso Trust, we believe the future lives in you. We've walked beside the dreamers, the doers, the job seekers, and the leaders, igniting the spark of potential that lies deep inside. When we unlock that potential, we don't just build careers or businesses, we build a future shaped by your hands, your dreams, your courage. It's all inside of you. This is more than just a chance. It's a movement, a promise that with the right support, dreams turn into reality, hope turns into achievement, and potential turns into legacy. Kagiso Trust is here to walk with you every step of the way because the future isn't just ahead of us, it is inside of us all. Kagiso Trust, igniting human capacity. The future, it doesn't just arrive, it's born inside each of us, waiting to be ignited. At Kagiso Trust, we believe the future lives in you. We've walked beside the dreamers, the doers, the job seekers, and the leaders, igniting the spark of potential that lies deep inside. When we unlock that potential, we don't just build careers or businesses, we build a future shaped by your hands, your dreams, your courage. It's all inside of you. This is more than just a chance. It's a movement, a promise that with the right support, dreams turn into reality, hope turns into achievement, and potential turns into legacy. Kagiso Trust is here to walk with you every step of the way because the future isn't just ahead of us, it is inside of us all. Kagiso Trust, igniting human capacity. The future, it doesn't just arrive, it's born inside each of us, waiting to be ignited. At Kagiso Trust, we believe the future lives in you. We've walked beside the dreamers, the doers, the job seekers, and the leaders, igniting the spark of potential that lies deep inside. When we unlock that potential, we don't just build careers or businesses, we build a future shaped by your hands, your dreams, your courage. It's all inside of you. This is more than just a chance. It's a movement, a promise that with the right support, dreams turn into reality, hope turns into achievement, and potential turns into legacy. Kagiso Trust is here to walk with you every step of the way because the future isn't just ahead of us, it is inside of us all. Kagiso Trust, igniting human capacity. The future, it doesn't just arrive, it's born inside each of us, waiting to be ignited. At Kagiso Trust, we believe the future lives in you. We've walked beside the dreamers, the doers, the job seekers, and the leaders, igniting the spark of potential that lies deep inside. When we unlock that potential, we don't just build careers or businesses, we build a future shaped by your hands, your dreams, your courage. It's all inside of you. This is more than just a chance. It's a movement, a promise that with the right support, dreams turn into reality, hope turns into achievement, and potential turns into legacy. Kagiso Trust is here to walk with you every step of the way because the future isn't just ahead of us, it is inside of us all. Kagiso Trust, igniting human capacity. The future, it doesn't just arrive, it's born inside each of us, waiting to be ignited. At Kagiso Trust, we believe the future lives in you. We've walked beside the dreamers, the doers, the job seekers, and the leaders, igniting the spark of potential that lies deep inside. When we unlock that potential, we don't just build careers or businesses, we build a future shaped by your hands, your dreams, your courage. It's all inside of you. This is more than just a chance. It's a movement, a promise that with the right support, dreams turn into reality, hope turns into achievement, and potential turns into legacy. Kagiso Trust is here to walk with you every step of the way because the future isn't just ahead of us, it is inside of us all. Kagiso Trust, igniting human capacity. The future, it doesn't just arrive, it's born inside each of us, waiting to be ignited. At Kagiso Trust, we believe the future lives in you. We've walked beside the dreamers, the doers, the job seekers, and the leaders, igniting the spark of potential. The future, it doesn't just
Developing
arrive, it's born inside each of us, waiting to be ignited. At Kagiso Trust, we believe the future lives in you. We've walked beside the dreamers, the doers, the job seekers, and the leaders, igniting the spark of potential that lies deep inside. When we unlock that potential, we don't just build careers or businesses, we build a future shaped by your hands, your dreams, your courage. It's all inside of you. This is more than just a chance. It's a movement, a promise that with the right support, dreams turn into reality, hope turns into achievement, and potential turns into legacy. Kagiso Trust is here to walk with you every step of the way because the future isn't just ahead of us, it is inside of us all.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Lerato, and I'm going to be the moderator for quite a few sessions this morning. Thank you so much for joining us, and to those already who are watching online. I do want to apologize, please, for our late start. I think for those of you who were driving into Pretoria this morning, if you're driving in from Johannesburg, you'll know there was an accident around Rigel Avenue, and that's caused quite a few delays. So we're just waiting for some of our participants to just make their way. They're on their way. And so we believe we will start nearer 9:45. I know that's a little bit of a drag, but there's tea and coffee outside. But we promise to start shortly just to make allowance for everybody who's caught up in that accident-related traffic. And we will also send out a notice online for those who are watching virtually. I hope that's all right, and thank you.
The future, it doesn't just arrive, it's born inside each of us, waiting to be ignited. At Kagiso Trust, we believe the future lives in you. We've walked beside the dreamers, the doers, the job seekers, and the leaders, igniting the spark of potential that lies deep inside. When we unlock that potential, we don't just build careers or businesses, we build a future shaped by your hands, your dreams, your courage. It's all inside of you. This is more than just a chance. It's a movement, a promise that with the right support, dreams turn into reality, hope turns into achievement, and potential turns into legacy. Kagiso Trust is here to walk with you every step of the way, because the future isn't just ahead of us, it is inside of us all. Kagiso Trust, igniting human capacity. The future, it doesn't just arrive, it's born inside each of us, waiting to be ignited. At Kagiso Trust, we believe the future lives in you. We've walked beside the dreamers, the doers, the job seekers, and the leaders, igniting the spark of potential that lies deep inside. When we unlock that potential, we don't just build careers or businesses, we build a future shaped by your hands, your dreams, your courage. It's all inside of you. This is more than just a chance. It's a movement, a promise that with the right support, dreams turn into reality, hope turns into achievement, and potential turns into legacy. Kagiso Trust is here to walk with you every step of the way, because the future isn't just ahead of us, it is inside of us all. Kagiso Trust, igniting human capacity.
I think we've internalized that.
The
Thank you
future,
so
it
much.
doesn't just arrive.
Again,
It
apologies for the late start, and thank you to all of you who were able to wade through the traffic and the crisis on the roads to get to the CSIR. The warmest welcome to what is a really important dialogue on enterprise development, dynamic enterprise development, and really helping small and medium enterprises scale up in this new, complex, but full of opportunity economy at the moment. Our theme for this forum is reimagining collective enterprises as scalable engines of inclusive growth and regional economic development. I love this quote by Dhirubhai Ambani, one of India's greatest entrepreneurs and a bona fide dollar billionaire. And he said, if you don't build your dream, someone else will hire you to build theirs. So if you don't build your dream, somebody else is going to hire you to build theirs. So I believe that entrepreneurs are first and foremost dreamers. They don't want to build other people's empires. They want to do it themselves. They are self-starters. And to that, we really honor the courage of entrepreneurs. The dream begins in a really small space, what we call the small business. And research shows that globally, small businesses are the original creators, the primary engines of growth, and the early stage problem solvers, because I think we forget that. 90% of businesses registered worldwide are SMEs. 70% of employment created worldwide is at a small or a medium enterprise. And regardless of how volatile markets become, and we're seeing it right now, right? Administered costs rising, energy prices rising, fuel costs rising. We might even have supply chain issues, but we heard of a peace deal this morning. They continue to trade. And that ability to continue to trade is a demonstration of a kind of a resilience. And so not only are entrepreneurs problem solvers, the original dreamers, they're also very, very resilient. And who are these entrepreneurs? Because as storytellers in the media, we love to look beyond statistics. Who are they? We encounter them every day. They are the mom and pop stores, as Americans call them. They own the grocery stores. They trade the vet cook. They own the hardware store. They are the florist, the baker, the cake maker, the dry cleaner, the tailor. And I think when you see them embedded in your local community, you realize that SMEs are also nurturers of communities as well as of markets. We build our social values around many SMEs. The challenge, though, is that a company can't stay or a business can't stay small forever. It has to start scaling up. And so we talk about SMEs. So it has to move from that original place of being small to being medium. But often in the discourse in South Africa, we also cap it at medium. What stops that S to becoming medium, to becoming regional, to becoming global? Why does the trajectory stop somewhere here when it could elevate here? And so if you say to me, who did it? Well, I'll point it to you. Many women, you use L'Oreal products. L'Oreal is a French global cosmetics company, said to be one of the biggest listed entities on the French stock exchange. It started off as a family business, an SME. Tata Motors, a global automotive giant, it is a family business that started in India. Aliko Dangote and his brother started a sugar and flour mill, eventually becoming a cement factory. Now they own the biggest refinery in Africa. That is a family business started by two brothers. Ben and Jerry's ice cream, two friends. Pick and Pay, although they're undergoing transformation, family business over generations. Many real estate companies, Discam, Prada, Versace, Dolce & Gabbana, those all started off in a workshop, in a garage, and they're global heritage brands, legacy brands that we know of today. And so I guess this forum is about doing just that. Can we start thinking about scale, about elevation, about ambition, from the small to the medium, from the medium to the regional to the global giant that trades across markets, jurisdictions, and foreign currency zones, foreign currency that can easily be repatriated to South Africa to help stimulate the economy much more. And so as we speak today, we're speaking really in those ambitious regional terms. We're talking about integrating our SMEs into wider industrial global value chains, maybe starting regionally with the African Continental Free Trade Area, and then thinking about more ambitious international connections. We're talking about future preparing our SMEs. We hear that we're living in an AI-driven, data-driven world. how do we integrate or start to encourage our SMEs to incorporate a lot of this new technology in their business models and operations, reaching more clients, clearing up the administration of their back offices? How do we get them thinking about it? And of course, funding is going to be an important part of the conversation because you can't scale up without resources. And so what kind of financial tools are needed to really empower our SMEs? So we're going to be talking about different models, from grants to equity, to bigger loans, to better credit scoring. And so we're also going to have a few of those technical conversations today. And so as we deliberate over the next 2 days, can we think about the holistic picture, funding, innovation, incorporating new technology, data sciences, knowing your customer, and expansive thinking beyond just the local to the regional, the continental, and the international. And all of this is born of really a lot of work that is being done by the Center for the Advancement of Dynamic Enterprises, CADE, the CSIR, where we are, and the Kagiso Trust. And they come together really because embedded within all of these organizations is a value system that says we believe in inclusion, in opportunity, in social justice and equity. And that social justice and equity needs to begin in our communities, in our SMEs. And so with that, the warmest welcome. Please enjoy the forum. Please share your insights. And please welcome warmly the chairman of the Kagiso Trust, Mangoni Ntsaba.
Good morning, everyone. Program Director, distinguished speakers, which we will hear from later today, esteemed partners in government, business, academia, civil society, and guests online. Good morning again. We meet at a defining moment for South Africa's economy and for the future of inclusive growth. This is not just a moment of incremental change. It is a moment for systemic transformation. We have spent too much time and energy on incremental change, and it has not moved the dial. Hence the importance of systemic change. The theme of the summit, reimagining and repositioning dynamic enterprises as engines of inclusive growth and dignified employment, is not simply a topic for discussion or dialogue. It is a national imperative. All of us have a role to play. Across our country, in rural communities, townships, emerging urban centers, there exists a powerful but underutilized force. This is collective enterprises. This includes cooperatives, community property associations, family-owned businesses, and other small enterprises. They're not lacking in potential. They're constrained by the systems around them. And I think this topic is really unpacked to say, what are these systems and how are these constraining businesses? So the question before us is not whether these enterprises matter. The question is, what will it take to unlock their full potential at scale? At Kagiso Trust, we spent the last 4 decades working at the intersection of education, community development, economic inclusion, and capacity building. I want to believe that many of you know who is Kagiso Trust, and that last year we celebrated our 40-year anniversary. Through this work, one truth has become clear. Development does not fail because of the lack of effort. It fails when systems are fragmented, as they are in South Africa today, when opportunities are not structured, and when human potential is not fully aligned. This is why igniting human capacity sits at the heart of everything that we do. It is more than a philosophy. It is a commitment to building the conditions that enable individuals, communities, and enterprises to move from survival to sustainability and to competitiveness. Dynamic enterprises are central to this vision. They already exist within our economy, serving real markets and responding to real needs in our communities. Yet, despite this, they remain constrained not only by access to capital or policy, but by the absence of a coherent ecosystem that connects opportunity, finance, and markets. And hopefully this collective here is going to begin to create and sustain that ecosystem. This summit, therefore, is not just about enterprises. It recognizes that markets do not function in isolation. They are built. Enterprises do not scale in isolation. They scale through these ecosystems. And inclusion does not happen by default. It happens by design. Therefore, that design will be important. It must be one of the important outcomes of a session like this. Over the next 2 days, we must engage with urgency and intention. We must ask ourselves some difficult but necessary questions. Will we continue to operate in silos, or will we build integrated systems? Will we design for small-scale impact as we've been designing in the last donkey years? Or will we design for scale from the outset? And will we continue to treat collective enterprises as peripheral, or will we place them at the center of economic strategy? These are not theoretical questions. They are choices that will define whether we succeed in reimagining our economy or merely describing the challenges. We have a tendency to describe the challenges and describe and moan without really getting to the core of what needs to be done. As we open this this summit over the next two days, we must ask ourselves those questions but come up with maybe not solutions, but describe options that could in the future become solutions. At Kagiso Trust, we believe that South Africa has all the building blocks required for inclusive growth: land, infrastructure, markets, and most importantly, the people. What remains is a system that connects all these elements in a way that is intentional, scalable, and sustainable. This is why platforms like this summit today are so important. They create spaces not only for dialogue, but for alignment, shared purpose, and coordinated action. As we open the summit, I encourage each one of you to challenge assumptions, to share insights honestly, and to think boldly about what is possible. Continue dreaming. Sometimes we lose attention to possibilities because we are scared of dreaming or of being called dreamers. What's wrong with being called a dreamer? Kagiso Trust will continue to play its role as convener, bringing the sector together to track progress, measure impact, and hold ourselves accountable to commitments that emerge from forums such as this one. Because if we succeed, if we truly reimagine and reposition dynamic enterprises, we will do so more than strengthen businesses. We will expand access to opportunity, restore dignity through meaningful economic participation, and unlock potential. Let the summit mark the moment we move from intention to implementation and from conversation to coordinated action. Let it be the beginning of a new chapter, one where collective enterprises are no longer on the periphery and on the margins, but at the center of South Africa's economic future. I thank you very much and welcome you to this summit.
Thank you very much to you, Chairperson Mangoni Ntshaba. You've said a few really important things that we should really crystallize as we have our conversations, that we need to talk about systemic shifts, regulatory policy, and building coherent ecosystems that integrate all our SMEs into the mainstream economy. And we can't have policy that says, oh, we've got a framework for spaza shops, and oh, we've got a framework for retail, and oh, maybe we've got a framework for urban farming. All of those link up at some intersection, and it's at that intersection that policy must really see the bigger picture. We also mustn't forget to talk about the fact that South Africa and Africa have what is called a youth dividend. Dividend means an opportunity again. 70% of the demographic, young people. Who are these young people? Many of them enjoy music, art, photography, and media. They create content on social media platforms like TikTok and Instagram. And upon these platforms, their videos can reach anywhere between 10,000 to 50 to even 1 million views and followers. Who are those viewers or followers of these short form videos? Well, they are definitely people with enough buying power to purchase data and maybe something else. So have we ever considered that on those platforms is another market opening up through this creativity? Consumers you can reach through advertising or through co-creating with those young creators. I'm just pointing this out because the economy we are reimagining is not the traditional economy divided as mining, manufacturing, services, retail. It has these new gray areas that need to be explored. And if we do explore these new spheres, it opens our mind to the fact that mining exploration is taking place for the first time in 15 years. That means an SME can be an OME or a junior miner or a caterer or a supplier somewhere in that prospecting value chain. We hear about the hydrogen economy, green hydrogen, clean energy. Well, people developing this energy are entrepreneurs in themselves. Can SMEs somehow feature in this new market? Especially because we've got the deregulated green energy sector that just came on stream in April. Where can they fit in to that clean energy space? The chairperson says, you know, we've got a lot of assets, land, municipal land. Not just that, municipalities have a huge property stock in their portfolios. What are we doing with those derelict buildings in inner city Johannesburg? Some can be repurposed, yes, into social housing, but you know, some of them can be repurposed into urban farming. If we innovate around hydroponics, rooftop farming, apiaries, and the like, using municipal services, using those buildings, not just looking for land in a dense metropole like Johannesburg. And so if we think like that, we start to look wider than what economic metrics tell us. And we're urging that at the summit, we do just that. That's the reimagining. Look beyond the template into the peripheries, into the places where others fear to tread. And so we're urging you to have a different mindset. And I think one person who's going to do that really well is Ms. Madumezulu Siskeli Silinda, the Executive Director of CADE. She's an academic and in her work has been a champion of women's empowerment with the work that she's done at Wiphold and many other places. And she joins us now to really craft for us the thinking around collective enterprises, dynamic enterprises, and the summit today.
Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us this morning. Our theme today is reimagining collective enterprises as scalable engines of inclusive growth and regional economic development. So who's invited us here and why? The Center for the Advancement of Dynamic Enterprises is an emerging industry-driven center designed to overcoming systematic fragmentation in enterprise development by positioning what we call dynamic enterprises. And this is a term that we are bringing here to the fore, and some of the speakers might want to define the term, what it means, and all of us really online and all of us that we are here, more than welcome to define it the way that we want. But it simple just means that there must be change in a particular enterprise, however that change comes about, and it must be market-based. The change that should come about should be able to scale, should be able to grow that particular enterprise. So if our companies have been established in the 1940s and the 1930s and the 1920s, and they have employed 5 people, and they still employ 5 people today, we then have a result of what we have, which is a growthless, a jobless growth. So they can continue to grow and they can continue to profit, but without jobs and markets being established and opened. I was saying to a colleague that we don't have steel anymore. What is there instead of steel? We might not be having manufacturing the way that we had it in the 1980s. And what is there? And so today, most of the economists that are here on the program are going to be talking about that. So when we talk about dynamic enterprises, it is not something that we really do not know. We are talking about something that really needs to have a life, that must change, that must scale, that must adapt, that must be willing to grow the economy. And then we must start to see the shift of the dial of the GDP that we have. We are not here about CADE, we are here and we are co-conveners with the Kagiso Trust, and we are truly appreciative to the Kagiso Trust really for buying into this. We are here about what we call the CADE Annual Summit. And this is the opportunity that I want to talk about this morning. This is a thought leadership convening that is designed to align champions, stakeholder champions, entrepreneurs, industry leaders, investors, policymakers, academics, and practitioners, and you can just call all that kind of the ecosystem that we have around a shared challenge, repositioning dynamic enterprises as scalable, competitive, and investable economic actors capable of generating dignified employment. And I've already now explained what we term dynamic enterprises. It doesn't matter whether they are cooperatives, it doesn't matter whether they are consortiums, enterprise consortiums, or cluster networks or supplier aggregation platforms. They have to come together to build the missing middle. And we do that because there is a lot of fragmentation, and this is what the term that you will hear more often as we go along. Let me not get ahead of myself because I only have 5 minutes. Why now? Today and tomorrow you will hear from most of the speakers about our 3-layered economic system that is not in sync with each other. At the top, we have got a very solid, strong South Africa, with gateway to Africa. We have got this institutional depth. We have got the best of the markets. JSE is one of the best, stock exchange in the world, and all of that. And we know that. They will be talking about these economists that really most of the time will diagnose our economy like that. But in the middle, growth has been slow, as we know, and insufficient to drive structural change. For many years, we've been stuck in the knot points. I'm not the one to talk about that. High participation, low scalability of entrepreneurs, majority at the survivalist, low transition from small to medium or low transition from micro or from survivalist to micro to Lerato has just indicated here. The economy is not absorbing labor at scale, high spend of ESD, but low systemic impact visibility. Sometimes we talk about the 15 billion worth of ESD, but no consolidated national figures that we have at this moment in time. But also that 15 billion does not translate to industries. It went to people, it's ESD that went to the hands of the people, it went to small enterprises, but if it only benefit one enterprise and does not translate into an industry, we are not growing as a country. They are going to talk about that. I'm not going to add a lot of the diagnosis. And then at the bottom layer, you then have what we call a fragmented and uncoordinated ecosystem. And I'm just talking about our ecosystem. It's costly to loan. If you have a CEO sitting in Durban and another CFO sitting in Johannesburg and a COO sitting in Cape Town, trying to manage one loan, which is in Messina, you can then imagine how costly that is. No early warning signs, of these enterprises which are in distress. Markets are limited and value chains are closed. This is where we are. So even though fragmentation is a global feature of economic systems, in our context, it is more deeper, it is more structural, and more limiting to scale. And it has versed to what I call dysfunctional fragmentation. And so that is why we are here. And so what if all of that is happening? This is a system of what we call a missing economic architecture. Miriam is here. In the past, we were talking about the trickling down. I think you'll still talk about that maybe. The trickling down of the economy. It's okay when people are at the bottom. It will trickle down through triple BEE, through initiatives, through all of that. But we now know that it doesn't really trickle down. If it does, not that fast, because up to now, 30 years later, it hasn't really reached maybe even the middle. So maybe it's time that we talk about the bubbling up of that system. So what we have is an absence of an integrated, coherent economic architecture that can connect enterprises, markets, capital, and local economies into scalable, investable production systems. And so why us? Why should it be us doing that? And I'm saying we can contend that maybe most of the things that I have said may not be the case. But what is clear is that the current model somehow is not working. The question is not whether we act, but how we design a system that can. It is apparent that no single institution can deliver this alone. The system must be co-created somehow. Hence, we are here, all of us, to try and figure out how can we co-create a system that can work. And so we believe that the annual platform could be the beginning of us co-creating a system that would work. We're not starting with writing a policy. Policies are very good, but they can be blunt instruments at some point. We're starting with initiatives. We're starting with us coming up here and saying, what is it that doesn't work? Where are the constraints and where are the solutions? We are not going to delve down into what doesn't work. I mean, they will diagnose that forever, as we have already said. But we are now reimagining what is an unfragmented ecosystem. How would it look like and how would it work? And this is the opportunity that we have, or the promise of the CADE Annual Summit, is to design the missing layer, not starting by policies I've already indicated, to learn about economies of scale. We need to learn about how they work, how they operate, why New Zealand is doing it, why Australia is doing it, why Kenya is doing it, why somehow else, in terms of cooperatives and in terms of our CPAs, it's happening and it's not happening with us. To explore new ways of building markets that can generate jobs and income, to build knowledge and a replication infrastructure. So what we are promising when we finish here is that everything that would have been spoken here, we are going to record it. We are going to also just develop a recording of it, and we are going to be able to share it with everyone. So how will that work? Is that every year we will come here. We will talk about the systems. We will talk about the initiatives. We will talk about the models. We will share what is working in other countries and it's not working here. Tomorrow we are going to be having Veit, who's going to share more about the German and what they're doing in terms of the cooperatives. And so what works in terms of finances, what works in terms of markets development and markets entry and market generation, and what works in terms of strategic partnerships, we are going to be learning about that. And then from there, we are going to replicate those initiatives as we go forward. So over the course of today and tomorrow, we gather with a shared purpose to ignite a journey that harnesses our collective knowledge in service of building a stronger, more inclusive country. We acknowledge with deep appreciation the leadership of the Kagiso Trust, who have placed their confidence in this summit and planted the first seed. It is our hope that the moment will inspire others to step forward, to partner with us, and to help nature and grow this effort into something of lasting national impact. So after each and every speaker today, we need to be asking, and they keep on saying we need to be asking those critical questions. So the 4 questions that I think we need to ask is that, what is the speaker not saying? What is the speaker not, what are the questions that we are not asking? Or what is the new things that has been shared with us? And where should we begin? If we could, let's just say we have R1 million and they said, this is the R1 million you can start. Where would I start? What would that be? Where would that be where I would invest that amount? And then Paul always says, when we are in a meeting, we must ask, who else must be in this room to be able to give the proper answer? And thank you all for believing in us, convening you, but believing in that the potential of the country is a much more effort. Lastly, I just want to thank the small CADE team from the Kagiso Trust, which is led by the local government and SED teams, Paul and Quintin, and the rest of the teams, and to thank the Kagiso Trust once again for believing in us and for giving us the space to convene and to share whatever we're going to be sharing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for framing the forum and just the trajectory or the path we should follow in terms of ideation. I do want to ask Siskeli, I know everybody calls you Siskeli. So your name is Madume Zulu. My isiZulu says that's the sound of thunder in the sky. Is that correct? And you came here like the sound of thunder in the sky, urging us to really go beyond convention and really start considering what is transformative, what is groundbreaking, what is earth-shattering in terms of reimagining not just how dynamic enterprises, collective enterprises fit within the ecosystem, but how we can stimulate a new growth framework for South Africa as a whole, so that we're not just grateful to be growing at 0.7%, but we start moving into the 5, 6, 7% that could absolutely change the face of the South African economy. She's also asked us to ask ourselves the questions, the whats and the whys. As we share ideas, what's new in this thinking? what's needed by way of actionable solutions. What does a redesign, recrafting of a business model or a social architecture or a financial architecture look like? And of course, that one fundamental question, if there could be a really significant financial commitment made, if you're sitting there presiding over how money's to be spent, what would you say the money must do to be catalytic? So can we keep thinking like that in our questions and answer sessions? So our first conversation really speaks to the theme, setting the scene, reimagining social collective enterprises as engines of inclusive growth and regional economic development. And as the chair and Ms. Linda urged us, creating dignified employment. So not just employment, but dignified employment. Our panelists, if I may invite them up, are Miriam Altman, an economist and strategist at Altman Advisory, Advocate Mtholo Xulu, the president of the South Africa Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Sifiso Ndwandwe, the executive director of the Sobata Enterprise, and Ms. Ayanda Khumalo from the Kagiso Trust. If I may ask you all to come up, please. Waiting for. Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. So let me welcome Miriam Altman and Sifiso Ndwandwe for being with us. And Miriam, let me ask you to really give us an overview of this topic. What do we mean, actually? We've been hearing these terms, collective enterprise, dynamic enterprise. What are those, and why should we really incorporate them into broader thinking around scaling up small businesses?
So if I can just ask, I prepared a presentation, which I don't have to do, but it was also done so that people had notes. Should I just speak off the cuff?
It's really up to you, but I think we really want to get into your mind to understand what the issues are before we have that panel discussion.
Okay. So you don't want me to use these? I just understand.
It's really up to you. If you want to do a presentation to set the overview, that's fine. If you want to just launch into just a few, thought perspectives, go ahead, and then we can have the conversation.
If I could just get the clicker, I just want to. Morning, everybody. See, how does this work? There we go. So morning, I prepared some slides, whoops. Oh, as I was asked to do, and don't actually need to present them necessarily. I will leave these behind. So I've given an Acrobat version. Am I doing something? Oh, it's going off here. But I think it's okay up here.
Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, anyway, very good to be here. This question of dynamic industry in South Africa is incredibly critical. I personally have been working on this issue for probably 25 or 30 years. There was a question of cooperative thrown in, something that I've also personally worked on. If I can just say, so I've been part of this economic architecture, sometimes I hate to admit it, since, at least the early 90s when we were trying to think of what to do. And there were people who said, don't add too many adjectives, just get growth. And at that time, I found that offensive, I've got to say. I don't find it offensive anymore. The reality is that we have we had improvements in employment, and it's worse than when I started working on this in 1990. I used to lead a lot of work on unemployment. Growth is non-existent. People are very poor, and dynamic enterprise is incredibly important to the growth of an economy. And I don't know if Gurley was saying that I was using trickle down language or if we just used to debate it, but I don't use trickle down language. I always think in terms of systems. And the fact is that South Africa has a very, unequal society, of course, and a highly concentrated economy, and more or less has hardly grown for the past 50 years, not just because of Zuma and not just because of whatever. It's something on the National Planning Commission, and I will give you references for that, but that we looked at, which was to track all of this since 1960. We have something in us behaviorally that causes a problem, and a lot of my thinking right now is more orientated towards that than it is even to technical problems. We've got some kind of behavioral problem that kills business. We operate in a zero-sum way. So when businesses are doing well, we try to kill them, copy them, take what they have instead of cooperating. That's not a growth mindset. So just to say, I've got a lifetime of technical work, but increasingly my mind is focused on why we're like that, what to do about it. And I find personally, as a practitioner as well, I led the turnaround of telecom. I've been involved, and in addition to intellectual work, I've also led organizations, turnarounds, and so on. And I find that I'm more effective because I don't talk about them. I think about what have I not worked out. I think that's the only productive way to think. So I use this way of thinking in my own work, and that's why telecom turned around so fast. I don't know if people remember, about 13 years ago, I led that turnaround, and that's why it went so much better, because of this thinking, just to say. So dynamic enterprise is incredibly important. I wouldn't add too many adjectives onto it, is the first thing. You can look at different kind of ownership models and so on, but the critical thing is to have more of it, and we're having less of it. So one of the things we looked at in the National Planning Commission is that over the past 10 or 15 years, the reality is that we did have a growing contingent of business, not just dynamic business, and I'll define it just now, but we have a shrinking share of small business in employment, in GDP, just generally in the share of enterprise. That's not the direction we're supposed to be going in. We were supposed to be going into a direction where 90% of employment creation was created in small firms, et cetera. That, and that's not happening. So there's no doubt that we have to think about that. Not all of that is what we call dynamic business. And here's where we get to the definition, which is, this thing is, it's almost, thank God I'm not epileptic. This thing is, you won't see this as the audience, but this thing is flashing. That's why I'm getting confused, if you understand, because I understand that here it's just standing. Okay, so now you can talk about spaza shops and small business, and that's one kind of very important business. Dynamic, when you talk about dynamic enterprise, it's a very important kind of thing, but it's not that. Dynamic business and enterprise is something where you've got, independently owned, whether it's a cooperative, whether it's an individual, whatever it is, family, whatever it is, but it's the kind of organization that is able to innovate. It's able to integrate technology. It's adaptable. It's able to change to changing environmental circumstances. It's got a competitive drive. It may be introducing new products. That's what that's the definition of dynamic enterprise. And it is so critical to South Africa's growth and employment trajectory, ability to compete globally. And so the kind of companies that you were referring to, they're not just little spaza shops. They were companies that, they could have started as a family, but they had drive, right? And design. So I'm going to see if something happens. So the problem in South Africa is that, we've got entry, we don't have growth, as you've said. we've had this missing middle for a very long time. Those kind of enterprises that are sort of maybe 1 million revenue to 15 million type of thing. And we have a definite problem, not just of a spaza shop not growing, which would be great if that would happen, but for almost any firms, it's something that everybody talks about, is that it's just hard to get past. There's a wall in front of you. Be it a technology company, and generally speaking, small technology companies go register somewhere else because the IP, I mean, we're in CSIR. It's been a problem for many years. That is not a highfalutin university orientated problem. That is a national problem. It means we're not creating our national champions from the roots and from our core capability. We have the core capability. There's no doubt about it. Photovoltaic cells come from South Africa as an example. Imagine if all of that had been registered in South Africa. So as one example, as one small example, there are many, right? But also just generally companies that aren't necessarily technology first, also just generally, as we know, have a problem getting from sort of that small, very small kind of size and growing up. So we have that missing middle problem. Did you want me to stop there?
No,
Or continue? Okay. Okay. So, we're setting the scene. So I thought I would just set some general points. The first is that the macro environment really matters. And by that, I'm not speaking about macroeconomic policy. I'm speaking about the umbrella kinds of issues, because the problem that we sometimes have is you can do whatever you want to promote small business, but it's not going to have a big macro aggregate impact unless the environment is conducive to it. It's like saying you're going to help youth get placed in jobs, and that's awesome. Like, yes, it's great work, Harambee, and so on. But if the economy is not growing, it's important work, no doubt, but it's not going to go anywhere. You can only create so many jobs, create so many businesses, and so on in an environment that just has so many hurdles. So some of that, just very quickly, because we're setting the scene at the beginning, I thought it just had to be said that, things like what Treasury is doing to turn around the metros in relation to creating performance-based delivery of water, sanitation, energy, the design of urban spaces that are integrated. We're supposed to be densifying urban spaces. That's key to business development. I don't think people understand that's actually an economic action. Rural development and services for agricultural services, the logistics, the educational capabilities, digital enablement is so poor. And so you need a population, like if you were in China or Malaysia or Vietnam, where your population is completely digitally, like it's in their DNA. They're so enabled. So if you're setting up a business or you want to get small business online, people are so comfortable with it. Whereas in South Africa, it's very far from people. People just scramble to get data. So those kinds of things, I'm just giving examples, but those kinds of things are incredibly important to success. Although that may not be the focus of what we're going to talk about, but important to think. And then of course, you've got your, did I go the wrong way? You've got your standard, industrial intervention kinds of things around competition policy and sector support, particularly in employment-oriented industries like tourism. Like we say, I've done a lot of work on tourism. I've done a lot of work on a lot of things, but I did a lot of work for the industry on tourism, and we set new targets in 2019, and people are saying it's turning around. But the reality is that it hasn't actually grown in any meaningful way. And what I mean is if international arrivals, domestic tourism, those areas that really create jobs, it is improving, but we're no further than where we were when I did that work in 2017, 2018. Now, if we care about jobs, enterprise development, et cetera. So when I speak about some of the, I can say environmental things, okay, we had the visa issue, but you also can't get vehicles registered. There's so many crazy barriers. So now I'm going to come to enterprise, and I wanted to focus on a particular thing, which is buyer-supplier relations. Because this is where we stop talking about trickle down, and this is not new. It was new 25 years ago when I started doing work on it. I ran a think tank. This is the kind of thing we did. So buyer-supplier relations In other words, we call it procurement, but procurement that drives buyer-supplier relations, where the buyer, usually government or a major corporation, is doing supplier development. It is an absolutely critical idea in South Africa in a context of high concentration. So you can say, and if I can, Gurley and I are used to debating, so I'm sure you're okay with this. When you say we're going to trickle up, it is incredibly hard to do in an it's just rough. And if you even have a small amount of success, a major corporation is going to smash you down. It's how it is in South Africa, unfortunately. So I became interested about 25 years ago, if not more, in this whole area of how you stimulate industrial development and access through these buyer-supplier relations. And I give you references at the back of this presentation. So you will have it, and you'll have the link to all these papers. And even if papers are 25 years old or 20 years old, we were getting models from Japan in the 1920s. All of these things are things that are principles. So if you're looking for ideas for what to do, it's embedded in these. And what are the case examples? It's actually not new. And as ideas, we've taken ideas from Brazil and Colombia and Malaysia and all over the world and South Africa. So what makes this so important in a concentrated economy is, firstly, getting access to markets is so difficult in even like pharmacy is now taken up basically by two companies, Dischem and Clicks, right? It is so difficult in this environment. So the easiest way to get access to channel and customers and demand is through these buyer-supplier relations. And once you have a developed company, you can go on from there. But that's the way of getting in. That's why it's so important in a South African context. It leverages the capabilities of large corporations, the core capabilities. It helps solve for the financial gaps that we have. So working capital, guarantees, all of those kinds of things. And at a higher order level, about 20 years ago or 25 years ago, I worked with Paul Jordan at Mintech and Department of Science and Technology. And we had a theme called resource-based technology clusters. And we looked at this thing called lateral migration. We were testing this thesis. And the idea was, can we leverage resource-based industries like agriculture and mining, as an example, where you leverage their needs. For example, Eskom generated the capability in South Africa for prepaid meters. So we did a case study on that as an example. It's an idea. So they commissioned 4 companies or 3 companies to create the technology. This is many years ago. They created the technology. They chose one of the companies. The other companies went off and exported, and so did that other company they chose. So that's the lateral migration. De Beers created low radiation X-ray capability because it wanted to X-ray its workers as they left the mines each day. That's now used in medical technology around Africa in emergency situations. That's the lateral migration story. So there are higher order capabilities that can get created through this. And in my view, it's one of the few ways that we can industrialize across Africa, because it is incredibly hard to industrialize. Now I can see Lorato's giving me dirty looks. So, so I'm just going to say, so over the past 25 years, and you will have this PowerPoint. That's why I made it. I wasn't even sure if I was going to present it. So over the past 25 odd years, because if you look at the papers on my website, so HSRC, I did most of that work at HSRC. And by the way, Sean Phillips, who's now DG of Water, Department of Water Affairs, was working with me then on it, just by way of interest. So now 25 years ago, when we were starting to think about this theme, the only company that was really doing this meaningfully was Anglo Zemele, if you remember. And it was quite on the margins of what they do. It was very advanced thinking, but it was still very marginal in terms of their impact. It was a very sideshow kind of thing. Okay. But now so we developed a whole lot of papers that are available on my website. which HSRC allowed me to do. And that's the link I'll provide if you want to find them, because it's all still relevant. But now, because of the triple BEE codes and ESD and all of that stuff, it is now a very mainstream thing. So almost any corporate is actually doing this, and every corporate and government has, or SOE has its methodology, and it's developed. It's much more sophisticated, much more integrated into the business models of companies, much more leveraging of the core capabilities of companies. So anything from Eskom, De Beers, the examples I gave, to Exaro, you talk about 1 million, 900 million invested in high growth enterprise over 6 years, creating more than 3,000 jobs. So if you had 1 million, what I would be doing is stimulating this activity. I would be creating think tanks to figure out how to strengthen it, monitoring and evaluation, that kind of thing, because there's big money in this right now. Accenture, ShopRite, Sun International, the automotive OEMs. If you think about it, something like Takealot offers that kind of access and service. So I hope I get it right this time. Nope. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to go quick. So there's a place where dynamism breaks down. I think we all know this, but this is like a checklist, because I think a lot of people here probably are familiar with this, but I don't think we can be reminded too often. And I'm just going to summarize. This thing goes wrong when you have access without continuity. In other words, once-off contracts, no pipeline of demand. Value extraction at entry, late payments still go on. As an example, I'm not going to go through all of this. Weak capability transfer. Finance not aligned to contracts, so you don't get the benefit of that corporation. In fact, they extract because they don't pay you on time. And no pathway to scale. In other words, you may be locked into one company, and there isn't a plan to create diversification. So how do you turn procurement into a scale engine? Well, it's the converse. It's building demand pipelines with multi-year contracts, aggregated procurement, enforcing fair terms, 30-day payments, guys. How long? There's a commitment across corporations and government, and it's not happening. Corporations expect early payment, and they make late payment. It just kills you when there's no working capital, and then the companies aren't offering you working capital. It's a killer, and it's such a simple thing to fix. Embedding capability in the upgrading. Linking finance to contracts around invoicing and purchase orders, guarantees, and blended finance, and creating scale contracts that enable diversification. And again, I hope I'm getting this right now. Okay, so I just want to make one point, and this is maybe a sensitive matter, but for people who are in policy or in business, or research, it's an incredibly important point that there is a policy, and I'm not involved in it. I'm not commentating on it. I'm just making the point that if we care about dynamic industry, this enterprise, these buyer-supplier relationships, there is a capability that has grown of note, and we need continuous improvement in it. Now, the new triple BEE scorecard would probably kill this. And again, I'm not involved in it. I haven't submitted comments. I'm just making the point that anyone here, if you're worried about this, should be worried about this issue, which is that the scorecard needs to be weighted to encouraging more and more of this, not less. Secondly, if there is a transformation fund, it should be complementing this kind of activity and not taking the activity away. It's just that this debate is live right now and needs to be attended to before this kind of activity is killed, because it took us 25 years. There was hardly any of it when we started doing this thinking. And now it's just ubiquitous. It's everywhere. So what I was going to show you, I'm going to stop now. You're going to be happy to know, is I've offered some references if you're interested, and then thank you. And these are my contacts.
Thank you very much. That was comprehensive. It was a bit, quite candid and provocative. Before I come to you, Mr. Ndwandwe, I'd just like you to just clarify for us, Miriam, some of the things you've said. So you said, there's something about South Africans, a mindset that doesn't engender this idea of dynamism, but actually ends up being an impediment. And I'd like you just to clarify what you mean by that, because some people say, you know, entrepreneurs are born. You can't legislate entrepreneurship. You can't teach entrepreneurship in a university. You either have a system that says you are self-starters, go-getters, do it, fail, rise up, try again. But this idea that we're going to be training people to be entrepreneurs is problematic. And then the second thing is, I've heard people say, you can't start a business with the aim of creating jobs. That can't be your motivation. Why do you want to start this business? I want to be a job creator. No. You want to solve whatever problem is in the market. There are no bakeries in my community. I want to create a bakery, not I want to be a job creator. So there's a mindset thing that's just misaligned.
I'm not sure how many businesses start because they want to create jobs, but I think that's absolutely right. You created, you have a product, you think you could have a competitive advantage, and you set it up for that, and then hopefully create some jobs. The mindset, look, being in a low growth environment for so long, I think means that people don't believe in growth. I've done a lot of thinking about this because as an economist, I'm confused as to how many smart people ask me, why do I care about growth? I've thought a lot about that. And I think it's because they don't believe that it can happen because we only experienced it for a few years. It is so important to be generating, you know, obviously employment generating growth, but when we had growth, it was job creating. So I think it creates, and I've done a lot of thinking about this, I think it creates a zero-sum way of thinking. High inequality, low growth. So it's a take. So we don't have common purpose. If you have something, I want it. Not, oh, hey, Lerato, I saw you were doing that. What could we do together? You know, I know how to do this. Maybe I could add value. Or yeah, or could you show me and help me set up? Maybe I could be, I could offer service in my community that's your thing. Or something like that. It's not generally. So we find in a lot of environments that it's more that you want to shoot someone down. And so we're not celebrating success in others.
And so this also goes to something you've also spoken about, which is kind of, even when there is some kind of dynamic thinking, the monopolies could shut you down. And I don't know if you follow, you probably have followed the case in the media at the moment where there's a chocolate maker, Bayers, and they've been making chocolates for 100 years. And they have an exclusive range for Woolworths. And then Checkers approached them a few years ago and said, could you develop a line for us? And once Woolworths heard that Bayers is now producing an exclusive range for Checkers, they changed the contract. They couldn't change the contract because the terms were set, but basically Woolworths said, take this new contract that has an exclusionary clause for Checkers, or we shut you down. And then they shut them down. And now this 100-year-old chocolate company has filed for bankruptcy, simply because a monopoly player said, you only work with us and no one else.
Goodness, I'm a chocolate lover. I didn't realize. Well, you know, Woolworths isn't, you know, obviously a monopoly, but those kinds of exclusive contracts is a competitive advantage. You know, some movies are on Hulu and some are on, you know, it's a competitive, it's just a competitive approach. You know, I almost wanted to come back to the entrepreneur question. So in a country where you know, the artisan class was pretty much killed off in the 50s and Black enterprise was illegal. We don't have that kind, I mean, we will soon because of just generational change, but we don't have a long history of entrepreneurial families, especially not in Black communities. And that's an incredibly important source of entrepreneurial thinking. So to say, well, you can't train, you know, you just don't know where your gems are going to come from. They come from very surprising places. So I think there has to be development, but it's not just a training thing. It's a mentoring thing. It's just a whole cultural thinking of how you create communities of people who think of themselves as entrepreneurs, think about business in a dynamic way, and then have support and certainly education.
And two more questions before we move on. You spoke about IP, and I've heard many young creatives and creators and manufacturers speak to me on the various talk shows I've hosted saying, I have an idea, I couldn't register IP, I had to take the idea to Europe or to China. They kind of bought the idea. It's now their product. It's my, it's my thinking, but it's now their technology because they have it. And all I can now do is kind of find a retail space in South Africa. Everybody will make it for me, and then I'll have to sell it in South Africa, but I no longer own or have mastery over that idea.
Oh, well, there's no reason why they wouldn't have mastery over it because they could register it overseas. They may choose to sell it, and that's their choice, to sell it at an early stage before something's realized. But the core issue is that we just don't really have conducive IP registration and support in South Africa and commercialization. So CSIR does some of that work, but you need more private sector engagement with the commercialization process.
And here's the last one. Is BEE the problem?
What does that question mean? What do you mean by that?
It means many people, and I'm not even referring to Elon Musk here, but many international businesses say this insistence of local equity before anything gets done in South Africa is very problematic for them.
I think it's more the method of how things are done. I hate to use Elon Musk as, an example of, I understand why you're doing that, but I don't want to get mixed up with, do we need to promote Black business and, affirmative procurement, et cetera? Absolutely. Does it need to be aligned to promoting dynamic business? Yes. The approach tends to have this zero sum. And I think that's the problem with a lot of the parts of the current proposed changes in the triple BE is it just locks in and locks in and locks in. So it's designed for a static zero sum situation as opposed to creating a regulatory environment that promotes growth and Black entrepreneurship, within that. But that idea that, we don't need Black empowerment, for me, I personally, I just find that offensive. Discrimination's a thing. It's very hard for people to progress in a society where it's just how it works. You have to have legislation and rules that enable, the ESD, the Black empowerment, the gender equity, or people won't do it. But it should be aligned to a growth mindset, which it is not.
All right, we'll explore some of that a little bit more. Sfiso Ndwandwe, Executive Director, Sotaba Enterprise, over to you. How do we reimagine that future? Have small enterprises or collective enterprises be engines of inclusive growth, regional development, and dignified employment?
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. I hope it's still morning, or it still is. Yes, good morning. Yes, I think you've heard from a high-level economist's point of view and very experienced and also understanding of the policy environment in the country. I'm going to share my thoughts more from a practitioner point of view. I've been in the ecosystem for the last 30 years. I've seen the white paper. I've seen the genesis right from 1996 up to now, and what perhaps the ecosystem has been trying to do over the period. I've seen the, some of you would remember the initial institutions after the white paper, Nzika, Kula, and who have evolved over time to become CEDA and CIFA, and today we have what we call CETFA. And you can see then the thinking, and it's interesting, right? Way back in 1996, when the responsibility for small business or for entrepreneurship was still falling under DTI, There was a young and dynamic deputy director at DTI called Alroy Dex. He's still around in the ecosystem. And there was this concept of a one-stop shop center, one-stop service center. It's interesting, 30 years later, we still don't have it. But it's also interesting that 30 years later, we now have an institution called SETFA, which for the first time is bringing the finance and the support and the business development support into one institution. And I think that journey, we're still yet to see, maybe it's going to take us another 30 years to see if actually that delivers. And yes, over the period, we've also realized that the role of private sector is incredibly important. And obviously legislation has come in, and we are still mourning the fact that the legislation, BEE, for example, has not quite delivered. I'm going to argue that the main problem, and has always been the problem, and will continue to be the problem if we don't confront it, is one of fragmentation. And I think all of us have said that maybe we need to understand what that means. Maybe we need to discuss what fragmentation actually is, so that we can probably look at ways in which we can address this problem. Because if we look at, I mean, the examples have been quoted already, that we have over 15 billion rands that's being spent as part of ESD funding. But why is it that now we cannot hold anyone accountable for what is the return on investment on 15 billion rand spent in the economy in the name of South Africans? Why is there no return on investment? Why is no accountability? And I think for me, that's some of the questions that we have to ask. Where we are now, we're talking about dynamic enterprises. I think part of the problem, and this is my personal view, is that over the years, we are going to go into elections very soon. I think the date has already been announced. 4th of November? Listen to the rhetoric. And it's been happening for the last 30 years. And I think that is, for me, I think the biggest shift that somehow maybe can start here is how do we begin to understand that entrepreneurship is a mindset problem, and it's a mindset opportunity. That a lot of our people, we have actually underdeveloped them, if I use that term, because when a politician takes the podium, the politician says, I'll do this for you. And I think for me that there is no greater underdevelopment than that statement. When people are promised to be given stuff. And I think if you look at the difference, the huge resources and the enabling legislation, if I may use that in quotes, that South Africa possesses compared to the rest of the continent. But if you look at studies, you'll still find that South African entrepreneurs are still lagging far behind than the rest of the continent. Why is that? And I think for me, I think it comes back to, not because we don't have entrepreneurs, we have lots of them, but I think it comes back to mindset. And the mindset is, of course, you could blame it to history, that blacks were not allowed to actually practice entrepreneurship during apartheid era, or they were discouraged in a big way. But also, I think since 1994, we have not positively encouraged entrepreneurship, in my view, in the way that we have behaved, in the way that we have created this expectation that stuff is going to be done for us. And I think you go to every community now, you find toy-toying young people, and many people, and people actually striking because they want to be given stuff. And I think that is the underdevelopment that I think that we have to undo. And if we have to create dynamic enterprises, we need to find dynamic entrepreneurs. And dynamic entrepreneurs are people who are self-starters.